She had no husband. She had no son. She had no brother-in-law, no nephew. She was all alone. The only thing she had was her persistence.
Welcome to the Parable Podcast. Thanks for joining Family Life on-air host Randy Snavely as he digs into the story lessons taught by the world's greatest teacher, Jesus. In this episode, it's part 1 of Persistent Praying, the parable of the persistent widow, as Jesus reminds his disciples to never give up. Taken from Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8.
At the turn of the 20th century, James Kraft got fired from his cheese job while on a business trip to Chicago. With only a few dollars in his pocket, Kraft had no way to get home to Buffalo, New York. Kraft bought a wagon and some cheese with the money he had left, and he began selling and delivering the cheese to people just to make enough to survive. At the time, cheese had a very short shelf life, and Kraft began experimenting with a way to make cheese stay fresher longer. It took him 2 years of experimenting and going broke more than once before he came up with the formula to keep cheese from spoiling quickly. Norman Kraft, James' brother, came up with the idea of pre-cutting cheese into slices to make it easier for the customer to eat. But it took another 15 years to figure out that procedure. The Krafts did not become famous for cheese making, but for discovering how to make it long-lasting and easy to eat. It took them decades to turn their company into a profitable endeavor, but perseverance paid off. James Kraft began with $65 in his pocket. Today, Kraft Foods is a multi-billion-dollar industry. In almost every walk of life, staying power is indispensable for success. In business, in sports, in military campaigns, in technology, you name the field, that is the case. The most talented and gifted person will not accomplish a whole lot if he quits under pressure. William Carey, the man credited with starting the modern missions movement, went to India to translate the Bible. One obstacle after another confronted and stunted his efforts. But year after year, Carey pressed on. Churches sprang up. India had a Bible in their own language. Carey's efforts encouraged others to head to the mission field. He was asked at the end of his work how he had managed to accomplish all he had done. Carey replied, "I can plod. I can persevere in any definite pursuit. To this I owe everything." Few people know what may be done till they try and persevere in what they undertake. The perseverance to get to the final result is seldom noticed by the public. The final product gets all the oohs and the ahs, while the endurance to get the good result goes unnoticed and overlooked. Nevertheless, staying power is a necessity. We mentioned that this is the case in most walks of life, and it's also true in our spiritual walk. God's Word tells us frequently to endure and not to quit. You are listening to Part 1 of Family Life's Parable Podcast, Persistent Praying. It's taken from Luke chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. We're talking about perseverance and persistence, and Luke chapter 18 is one of the passages in God's Word that really focuses on that thought. Beginning in verse 1. Now he was telling them a parable to show them that at all times they ought to pray and not lose heart, saying, There was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God and did not respect man. And there was a widow in that city, and she kept coming to him, saying, Give me legal protection from my opponent." And for a while, he was unwilling. But afterward he said to himself, "Even though I do not fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow bothers me, I will give her legal protection, lest by continually coming she wear me out." And the Lord said, "Hear what the unrighteous judge said. Now shall not God bring about justice for his elect who cry out to him day and night? And he will delay over them? I tell you that he will bring about justice for them speedily. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth?" Now, the judge in this story is a very bad man. He's evil. He has no reverence for God. He cares nothing about people. Worship? That's not gonna happen. Compassion and empathy? Non-existent. Loving God and loving people, the first two commandments? Forget about it. Jesus calls him unrighteous, and he is. What's really sad is the man knows it, too. It's not just others saying he's evil. He says himself in verse 4, "I do not fear God nor respect man." He admits he's wicked. And what's scary is he is in a position of power. He has been granted the authority to rule and judge, and since he doesn't care about divine law and has no sensitivity to people's needs, he does whatever he wants to in his courtroom. The widow in this story is at the opposite end of the spectrum. She's been treated poorly. She's destitute and lonely. Destitute because she keeps coming back to get what was rightly hers, and obviously she is in need of it. Lonely because she is representing herself in court. Back then, men were the ones who were in the courtroom. The only time a woman would appear was when no man was around for her. She had no husband. She had no son. She had no brother-in-law, no nephew. She was all alone. The only thing she had was her persistence. When we read what this lady does, frankly, you have to be impressed with her. She comes to this powerful judge who does not care about justice at all, nor does he care about what happens to her, and she keeps hammering him. At first, the judge ignores her cries and pleas, but she keeps hitting him. By the way, hitting and hammering are the correct words to use about this woman. When the judge says, "She will wear me out," in verse 5, the Greek word used is a boxing term, meaning to strike in the eye with everything you can put behind the punch. She was hammering him. I think I was around 10 years old when my parents bought me some boxing gloves, and I got all excited about the prospect of, quote-unquote, legally hitting someone. I talked my mom into strapping on the gloves and boxing with me, and I remember thinking, this is going to be so cool, I get to hit Mom. Well, that never happened. She pummeled me. She didn't hit me as hard as she could have, but her blows stung, and I finally covered up my face with the gloves, and I yelled, "I give up, stop!" I think it was my mom's way of letting me know who the boss was between us.
This has been the Parable Podcast with Randy Snavely. Click the subscribe button so you'll know when new episodes are released. And be sure to check out Family Life's other original podcasts, including If That Makes Sense, Business by the Book, and Rise Up with Steve, Therese, and Tim. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Your partnership makes podcasts like this possible. Find out more at familylife.org.